Hello, everybody. It is your Uncle Fish back again for School Fish Art Stream. J-Man wants a Gatling gun on the end of his tail. Oh my goodness. J-Man says the tail's where you put all the heavy artillery. Damn. Said he used to have a howitzer on the end of his tail. Hello, welcome back again, little kitties, boys and girls, theys and thems, children of all ages. Your Uncle Fish is back again with another amazing School of Fish art stream. Glad to have you here. This time, we are going to be talking about making your own custom brushes. I know we've been doing a lot of that, but this time we're going to be looking at actual inking brushes. I have people ask me all the time, "Ooh, cool! What cool brush is that? Where did you get that brush from?" And honestly, these days, I'm almost exclusively using a brush that I custom made because it gets just the vibe that I wanted and I like the way it looks and I'm really enjoying it. So, first off, let's get into looking at exactly how some of these cool brushes work that we like. Let me share my screen. I've got it in a different setup this time, so I'm having to look at different screens. Forgive me. All right. The first thing we're going to do is let's pull up one of the brushes that I really like from True Grit Texture Supply. We're going to look at, let's see, do I have a copy of that? No, I don't. Not on this computer. Rusty Nib 3 is one that I really, really have been enjoying for a long time. If you've looked at any of the books I've done over the last like 2 years, they've pretty much all exclusively been done with this rusty nib brush. And I love the texture of it. I love the feel and the way I can get like thin and thick lines pretty quickly. I love the rough rustic feel of it. It really ends up feeling more like ink scratched onto paper at the end of the day than a lot of other things do. I've really been enjoying this brush. I've been customizing this brush a lot over time with lots of little tweaks to the way it works and stuff to get it just the way I like it. And I've really been enjoying it. Another one that I've really been enjoying, I was just on it. I might should have started there because there's such a long line of brushes here. Um, Man, trying to find it in this list. That's one of the reasons that I'm a big fan of making your own little custom categories up here in your folders so that you can find exactly Little Smoothie Comics Inker. Okay, there it is. Took me a minute to find it. I've really been enjoying this one too for a lot of the same reasons. I like being able to get like a wide flat with it and then go back and get thin lines. I've really been enjoying that. Let's go in and take a look at the way this actual brush works, the Little Smoothie Inker. And one thing that I want to look at is the brush tip. And you can see there, that's a pretty rough shape. Like that is not just, that's not a smooth dot. That's a rough shape. That's part of what, whoops, I went too far. That's part of what gives the brush its little bit of texture there. Um, and then let's look at the stroke. All right, it's fixed it really close together. Like we could spread it out much further and get a rougher look out of it, but they've got it very close together. So that yeah, that's going to come out looking super smooth that way. All right. All right, cool. So that is the brush tip shape for that one. Let's go look at my other favorite one, Rusty Nib. It's up at the top. Rusty Nib 3 has been one of my all-time favorites. And again, we've got a nice little splotchy shape here, just a weird random shape, kind of squarish. Um, the stroke is the stroke has a much bigger gap in it. The other one was like zero point 0.2 or something. It was real tight. This is 6.6. So you can see more of the difference in that. Let's see, there's no spraying effect on it, which I didn't figure for inking. Brush tip, it's flipping it horizontally randomly each time it stamps a little image down, and it's flipping it vertically randomly each time it stamps it down. Let's see. Angle is set at 0. Let's look. It's got the angle set at random too, to a strength of 29. So it's just randomly going to turn it as well as flipping it over up and down. So that gives you lots of different versions of that same image being stamped randomly in all kinds of different ways, which gives you a very rough feel for that brush, which is really cool for some things. And for some things, you absolutely want that. The brush that I've been using a lot lately, the one that I made myself, we'll take a look at it. Let's see, where did I put it on this computer? Because this is a completely different computer. So, geez, where did I put it? Fishes, pins, maybe. Man, I know I had it in here because I was just using it the other day. I was literally just using it, and now I don't remember where I put it. That's why we make good folders to put stuff in, boys and girls, so that we don't lose things. It's not at the bottom of the. I tend to put things like at the top or the bottom of the list if they're my favorites, so it's easier for me at least find them. Okay, I can't find the brush that I've really been enjoying, so we're just gonna make it from scratch because sometimes that's what we gotta do. Sometimes the old world's gonna hand you a big old pile of lemons, and you gotta squish them up and make your own lemonade. Or you can just sit there sucking on a big old pile of sour lemons. I'm not going to do that, but you can do that. It's something you could if you own it. All right. So we are going to turn that layer off because we don't need it. We're going to make a new layer. And one of the things that I really like and I really am looking for in a brush is I want to be able to get like sharp lines this way, and then I want to be able to like cut off to a wide, thick line when I want to, and come back down to a sharp one. It's one of the things I miss about having like a calligraphy style pen that, if you hold it one way, you get a fine line, or a brush, you hold one way and turn. And like, I miss that. Like being able to come down fine with a brush and then just go sideways with the side of the brush and get a big thick line. I miss that. So we are going to mimic that effect by making like a triangular shaped brush. So when we're going one way with it, it's going to be relatively thin. And then, like when we cut the other way, it's going to give us a nice wide line. And it's been working out really well for me, and I've really been enjoying it. So that's the kind of shape that we're going to go for. We're not going for anything super specific. Like we saw the brush tips for the other ones. The other brush tips were like just random shapes. This isn't what they look like, but just random amorphous shapes. One of them was kind of shaped like that a little bit, and then it was just randomly spinning it around. They're not fancy detailed things. It's just rough nonsense. So I'm just taking my lasso fill tool, and I'm going to make a little random shape here. I'm going to make a random shape here. I'm keeping that general triangular shape in mind that I want. And all right, we'll have it the triangle be shaped that way. All right. So there we go. We're going to use this for a brush tip, and we're going to see how it turns out. Maybe we like it, maybe we don't. We can always fix it because it's our brush. It's our world. We can do what we want. We can make it the brush we want, or we can change it until we get what we want. Now I'm going to turn this layer to grayscale just because that it works out better for the brushes in the long run. It makes it either black or white, which is either the foreground color that you have picked or the background color. So if I wanted to incorporate white into this brush, then whatever my foreground and background colors were would be melded into this brush, and I could get cool effects that way. I'm not doing that for this particular one, but it comes in really handy for a whole lot of things, but not for this. I'm going to turn off the background just so we don't get any confusion. I'm going to select just that little area, and then I can go to edit and register material, or I can come up here to the menu and I can click on it up here on my menu bar. Because I do this so much, I added it as a custom item to my menu. But you can go to edit if you haven't done that already, register material, and then image. All right, now for the name, I recommend, I've said it before, I will say it every time. I recommend, because I download so many different brushes and assets and things, I start everything with my name or your initials or whatever you choose, something easy that you can save every custom item with. That'll make it real easy to find the things that you made quickly. So everything that I make starts with fish because that's my name. It's easy for me to find all the things I made. All I got to do is type in fish. Everything I've created shows up first. And then I am going to make it angle inker 02 because this is a second version of this brush that I'm making. I already made one that I really like. Now I'm making a new one for you to watch. Here we go. This is going to be free in the newsletter for y'all to enjoy, which you can get by signing up. Let's see. We're going to click use for paper texture. I probably won't do that, but it's nice to have the option. And we're going to use it as use for brush tip shape. And then we're going to click on over here and we're going to click on the download file because I like saving everything to the download file just because that's where all the new stuff I download goes to. It's easy to look there for my stuff too. And I put it all in the same place so I know where it is, so it's easy to find. There's a million little subfolders you could put it in. I just picked the easiest one to get to, which was download. And then we click OK. Now we have registered that little blob of shapes as a brush tip if we want to use it that way. So let's make a brush out of it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a brush that I really like. So I'm going to go to the brushes. I'm going to go to those retro supply company brushes, and I'm going to get the rusty nib brush that I like. I'm going to duplicate that subtool, and I am going to name it Fish Angle Inker 02. I'm going to click OK. Now, if I just copied it and renamed it and that was it, that would be a really crappy brush, and I would be stealing somebody else's hard work, and I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is I'm going to click on this guy here, and then I'm going to drag him up into this other folder. So it's now at the bottom of the main pen folder. So that's where my new Fish Angle Inker brush is. Now, I'm picking that brush because I've worked with that brush so much that I've changed the pressure settings and stuff on it so many times over the years since I've been using it to get it to working just the way I like with pressure sensitivity and stuff. I want to keep those settings that I have altered. And the best way to do that is to take a brush that I've already set the way I like it and start from there. I could start over from scratch and play around with it forever until I get the pressure settings the way I want it, but it's a whole lot easier to just start from one that already works right. And all of these have started from the same basic brushes and then been customized to whatever we want it to be. So we're starting from a brush that we know works the way we want already, and then we're going to jump off from there. So now that we have that basic brush that works the way we like, I'm going to click on the little show subtool detail palette, little settings bar there, the little wrench that gets into all the details. And the first thing we are going to do is we're going to go to brush tip and we're going to change out this shape. So we could use it starting with the True Grit Texture Supply custom brush tip that they made for it. I don't want to use it. I want to use mine. Now, I could search through millions and millions and millions of downloaded textures and stuff, some of them awesome and some of them not so much. Or I could come over here to the search bar and type in fish, and now we've cut it down to just the things that I've made. And that makes it a much shorter list. It's still a long list because I've made a lot of assets, but it's a much shorter list. Now, here's the first angle inker that I made, and you can see it's got a lot more in it. It's a lot denser shape. And now we're going to use this angle inker one. We're going to grab that, and then we're going to click OK. And now it's already changed the look of this. It's already changed the way this looks. But remember, it's set to randomly flip the brush up and down, randomly flip it side to side, and to randomly spin it. I don't want any of that. I don't want it working that way. So we're going to come down here to angle, and we're going to turn off random because I don't want it randomly spinning it around. Say none. Okay, that's good. And I'm going to turn the eyeball on angle, which over here in the subtool settings menu will now make angle visible over here. See, if I turn angle off here, it disappears over here. If I turn the little eyeball on, it makes it visible over here in the menu. So this is a setting I can get to. So if I want to change the pitch of that triangle as I'm drawing, I can do that now. I'm also going to turn off the flip horizontal because I don't want that triangle flipping back and forth for this brush. I want it staying the way I put it. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to turn off the flip up and down because, like I said, I want this brush to work a certain way. So we're going to turn that off. Brush density should be fine. And then there's no spraying effect, so I don't have to worry about that. And now we're going to come in here, and now we're going to play with the distance. The further away we get, the lighter and scratchier that line will be, the more you will see all the little dots and stuff in it. And then, like, the closer you get, the tighter it's going to be. Because there's still a lot of little holes in it, there's still some places in here that still show through a little bit, which is kind of cool. I want it to feel like a rougher brush. Let's try this 0.6 and let's play with that for a second. I'm going to pull that over there. I'm going to zoom in here. Let's see how that looks. See, that's kind of cool. I like that. And because of the way the pressure settings are, I'm still able to go from a thin line to a thick line. I love that little gap that I'm getting in there in the line. Like it's just like the pen's starting to wear out and the ink's starting to, fade. I dig that so much. Oh man, I'm liking that. And now I'm going to turn the eyeballs on gap and the distance of the gap. So now they're over here in the settings too. So I could play with this gap, and I could make it smaller and then see, what I think of that. That's still not bad. It doesn't have as much. See, when I make that upward stroke, it has a lot less of that in there. Or I can make it way higher and see. Let's zoom down a little bit and see. See, the more you stretch it out, then it starts to look a little stampy, and I don't want that. So we're going to come back down and make it pretty small. Let's see what one is. Oh man, I'm enjoying that. And part of it is getting used to learning what each brush will do, and it's amazing how quickly your work will change to fit around what you're instinctively seeing this brush is good at doing. But I haven't made one yet that I just hated. Uh, some of them I've liked more than others. Oh, see, I just think that's got some really interesting shapes and stuff to it. Oh man, I'm digging that. I personally want that gap to be a little smaller. So let's see. I'm kind of digging that. All right. So that's how we get to one of those kind of inking brushes like that. Well, let's try making a different shape, and then we'll see the difference in it and see how that works. See what we like about it, what we don't like about it. Let's try making a whole new shape. Um, this time, I'm thinking. Um, let's see. I can't see the keyboard down there. All right. I'm thinking this time, instead of making a triangular shape like that we did, I'm thinking let's see what happens when we do like a teardrop wing type shape. So that's on a layer below. I don't have to worry about the impact it's going to make on this new layer. And let's make a shape here, and we're going to make it thinner and thinner and thinner as it goes out. And you can make this as complex and as detailed as you want. This could be something that you actually like stamped out. I have used I've used lines that I've actually painted on paper and stuff I've done with markers and then scanned that in and made brushes out of it. You can do all kinds of stuff. But let's see what effect this has on the brush. All right, now I'm gonna draw a little selection and I'm just gonna get this sketchy little teardrop shape in it. And as long as I have that selected, when I go to register it as an item material, it'll as an image, it will only do what's in the selection. If I don't, it'll do the whole page. And we don't want that. Now I could click on my little shortcut that I put up here because I do this all the time. I'm going to click on that, or you could go to edit, but that just jumps the line. And again, I'm going to do this one as fish. Uh, let's say teardrop inker. And tear and tear always tear me up. I'm going to click paper texture, even though I'm probably never going to use it for that, but it never hurts to have the option. And then use it for brush tip shape. And then I'm going to go to all materials and then to download, and I'm going to click OK. And now it has put it in the download file. I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to come back over here to the brushes. I'm going to grab the fish angle inker that I know works the way I like, and I'm going to duplicate that subtool. I right clicked on it. Let's start over just to make sure we're doing everything step by step. I'm going to right click on it, then left click on duplicate subtool. I'm going to change the name to fish teardrop inker 01. Click OK. Make sure I'm on color. And then I'm going to click the little wrench on the settings there. So it opens up the settings menu. And I'm going to go to brush tip shape. I'm leaving everything else the same for now. I'm going to click on the little button here, the little arrow on the side of that, which opens up and lets me change what image we're using for that. And I could use anything in here. It could be something I created. It could be something I downloaded. It could be stuff from a photo that I took. I could use anything as a way to make a new brush off of it. I do it all the time, but for this time, we're going to use that, and we're going to type in fish, which gets us down to everything, and then we're going to type in tier, and that brings up fish tier drop. We're going to click on it until the OK lights up, and we're going to click OK. And now it has replaced that there. I'm going to go to stroke, and I'm going to mess with the gap in here and see if it makes any obvious changes. How far do I have to go before it makes an obvious change? That's pretty far. Let's see what that looks like when we use it. All right. Ooh, look at that, boys and girls. Let's zoom in on the playback. Oh, look at that cool rough edge that we got to it because it fades out. Because it's thick and dark over here, most of that side of the line is coming out nice and dark, and then it kind of fades off to nothing. So when we're going this way with it, we get a nice dark line. But then when we go this way with it, we get, oh, that is neat. I like that. And you could get just hints of it here and there. Now, we could totally change the way this brush works if we want to. But right now, just with the way it's set up, like we can change the angle on it and because I rotated that teardrop, now those lines are going up at the top. So now we get a little more scratch in the line as we're going sideways. And now we get a straighter line as we're going down at angles. Come back up, we're starting to get more of that because we've turned it up to an angle now. So we're starting to get more of it from that side. We get a lot of it from the top. That's pretty freaking cool, man. I don't think that's my favorite angle for it, but let's try this one. See, I might like that a little more, I think. It's almost the same angle, just down instead of up. And so we still get lots of thickness in some of those lines. Oh yeah, I'm digging that. Oh, that is cool. I'm enjoying that. Anyway, this is just one quick and easy way to make some different brushes out of it. Now, the other thing we can do is mess around with the textures on the brush. So I'm going to take that Angle Inker 2, again, the one that I was working on before. I really like that one. I'm probably going to use that one fairly regularly, I can see. I'm going to duplicate that one because I want to leave that copy the way it is. I like it. I know I'm going to use it. I want to leave it alone. I'm going to make this one Angle Inker 3 textured, just so I know what it is and I know how it's working. And this time we're going to add a paper texture to that brush, and we can change that paper texture as we're working to whatever we want it to be. So now we have Fish Angle Inker 3 textured, and we're going to go back into the settings, and then we're going to go down to texture here where it says none. We're going to click on that, and now we have the choice of any of the many textures that we have downloaded or that we've created off of pictures and images and stuff ourselves, all kinds of stuff. And I'm just going to come down and let's see, there's some drawing papers that I usually like pretty well. Let's try this drawing paper C. All right. And now I want to turn on the eyeball for that because I want the texture to be visible over here in my settings menu so I can change the texture to a different image when I want to easily. Um, Texture density, I'm going to take way up. We want the invert texture to be visible as well because that comes in real handy when you're doing highlights and shadows with a brush. It's really neat to be able to use one side of the texture to do like the shadows. And then when you invert it, everywhere that wasn't getting drawn on before is now getting drawn on, like a negative. So when you invert it and then do the highlights, you can get cool textures of shadows and highlights right next to each other without canceling each other out because they're trying to draw over the same piece of the image. Um, we want to make scale ratio visible so we can change that. Rotation, brightness, contrast, all that stuff. And we're going to take the contrast way up, and then we're going to take the brightness way up. You can see the brightness ends up making that brush too translucent. We don't want that. We don't want it so translucent that it won't get a black, but we want to make it a little bit. We want to make it, we want to give it some texture. Um, we're going to emphasize density and see what that does. Okay. Now let's drop the scale and make that smaller and see what we think of that. All right. And sometimes I like to turn stuff way up to the extreme just so I can really see the effect it's having on these little images on screen. And then when I get to drawing with it, I can play around with it and change it. All right, so we're going to take that down. Okay, so all right, let's see what that does with this brush. Now, we're going to zoom in over here next to these lines that we were just making with it. And see the difference? See the difference that that paper texture is making in it? Now, because I made all those visible, I can play with it over here and I can change it to whatever I want. I can drop the scale, which is dropping, it makes how big the image it is using to make that texture. Scale is how big that image is on the page. So the smaller we make that number, the smaller the image is, the more times it repeats, which can sometimes lead to funky looking patterns if you're not careful, if the texture isn't made well. But sometimes it's really neat to blow a texture up really big and get this big crazy version of like a textile texture when it's really big can be cool. Um, Sometimes I'll take like fine woven fabric textures and I'll blow them up really big and paint highlights on like armor with that, and it kind of gives it a carbon fiber kind of feel, like you can see the textured feel of the surface of the armor, and it makes it feel like a real thing rather than just a shiny piece of plastic. Um, all right, so we can play with the size, the scale ratio of it. Usually 100% works really well, but I'm thinking on this particular one, 100% is kind of big. So we're going to keep that a little bit small. We're going to drop the contrast down a little bit. We're going to try and drop the contrast down. Every once in a while, my pen's been giving me trouble on this screen. We're going to drop the contrast down, and we're going to drop the brightness a little bit. And then we're going to zoom out here, and that's still pretty pronounced. Um, we can drop the texture density down some too, so it's not quite as pronounced in the brush. It's still too much. I don't care for how thick that's coming out. It's making. I like there to be a little bit of texture in there, but that was just too much, and now that's not enough. But that's why I put the settings over here where I can get to them, so I can change them on the fly and get it to where I want it. See, now that is a little neater. I like that a little better. Um, there's lots of settings you can play around with. Like there's watercolor edge that I haven't really played around with much. Um, let's see what it does. I'm not seeing a lot of change. Let's take it way high and see what happens. It's definitely blurred all the texture out of it. It's done that for sure. Um, Hmm. Yeah, the only thing it's really doing is blending all of the texture out. So we're going to take that off. And there's lots of different stuff that you can play with. Oh, one thing that I always like to have available on here, and I think I already have them set to be visual, is the stabilization and the post correction, because post correction is a great thing. Stabilization and post correction will fix a whole lot of problems for you. Let's see, like if we take the stabilization all the way down and we'll turn off the post correction. You can make that just as wiggly and wiggly as you want, and it can sometimes make it hard to get a straight line. Um, the more you turn on stabilization, quit, work with me. The more you turn on stabilization, the more it will smooth out those lines for you. And like if you have a trimmer like I do, that's part of the reason I started working digitally originally, was because I could use stabilization to help ease some of my trimmer so that it didn't show up in my work, because it stopped me from being able to work for a long time. And that really helps smooth out lines. But it can also make it hard. Like if you want to do sketchy scribbly, I'm moving all over the place and it's not moving much because the stabilization is so high. So you need to find a place where you can still get all the cool shapes you want out of it, but it helps. It's nice to have that slider available, because sometimes I'm drawing trees or fire or something, and I want to be able to make all the little scribblies and not have it overcorrect as I'm scribbling out leaves or an afro or something. And then sometimes you want to be able to like really take the stabilization up as you're drawing a curve for the side of somebody's skull. Um, Stabilization is good for that. What's great for that is post correction. All right, when the post correction is low, you can still do whatever you want, and then when you're done drawing the line, it corrects it just a little bit, not much. You could tell that the line changed. Like watch as I make that line, and then when I stop and let go, it changes just a little bit because the post correction's on. The higher you take that, the more it's going to want to change that. And that was a drastic change. Now, the higher you take, like if I'm going to do the side of somebody's skull, I usually like to set my post correction up pretty high so I can do that and get a smoother line out of it, and it'll smooth that out. You can up your stabilization and get a nice curve for the side of somebody's skull, and you can play around with the settings until you get what you like. That's really handy. If I'm doing straight lines, I like to take the post correction all the way up, and then it will do its dangdest. If you get close to a straight line, it'll try and snap it to a straight line. It'll let you do some curves, but it'll wonkify them because it's trying to correct it and take as many nodes out of that turn as it can. But for trying to do straight lines, taking it all the way up to the top on post correction is great. If you've got to draw lines and floorboards, or you've got to draw, splash lines coming off of, a shocked victim and you're doing it the hard way, or you have to draw girders or buildings, it's great. Post correction also will kind of try and simplify your line width. So when it's lower, and you could go thin and thick and thin and thick and no problem. When it's higher and you go thin and thick and thin and thick, it's going to simplify that a lot. Again, it's really great for making a line go from like thin to thick, and go straight. Great for that when it's really high. Not so great for more complicated stuff. Most of the time, I honestly keep my post correction like around in the middle, and that's usually what I use for most of my inking. It helps straighten up some things a little bit, but not so much that that it makes a mess of it. This brush is going to take a little bit of getting used to, but I'm digging that. I'm digging that a lot. That's a lot of fun. There's a lot of different ways that you can make these things. One of these times, real soon, we're going to have to delve in to like using actual paint brushes and markers and things, and real textures from real life, and use them to make cool brushes. But anyway, this is a quick run through on how to make your own brushes. You can make the shapes any way you want to. I should really end here, but what are we doing if we're not overdoing? You know how it is. So we're gonna make one more kind of brush real quick, just because why not? All right, I'm gonna go back down to my blue layer there. Turn it on just so we can see it. And this time we're gonna work on a roughly rectangular shape. We're not gonna worry too much about it, but we're going to start on a roughly rectangular shape. We're going to take down the stabilization. We're going to take down the post correction, and I'm going to use this brush that we made, and I'm just going to make some shapes in here. All right, there we go. That's our new brush. That's our brush, and we're sticking to it. All right, now I'm going to selectez-vous, s'il vous plaît. Donde está biblioteca? That's a tick, sorry. And now we are going to go to edit. We're going to scroll down to register material image. Then we are going to click on material name, and we're going to start with our name so it's easy to find in the sea of downloaded things. And then we are going to say texture brush 03. I don't know if 3 is the right number, but I know I've made a lot of texture brushes already, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to download, and we're going to stick it in our download file. We're going to stick it where the downloads don't shine. And now we are going to take a brush. Now, and I'm going to show you how we can go from a brush that we can change a brush completely, almost completely. Like you can't take it from a pen to a shape operation like a rectangle or something, but you can change a brush a lot. Not 100%, but you can change it a lot. So we're going to start with, we'll start with the ones that we were just playing with, that textured angle inker. Okay. We're going to duplicate it. We are going to change the name to fish texture brush 03. You may know me from other texture brushes, such as texture brush 01 or texture brush 02, the revenge. And then we're going to click OK. And now we've got a copy of the same brush that we had before. Nothing has changed. Now we're going to add in this new texture that we made. Go to settings. We are going to go back to brush tip. We're going to click on that little arrow. We are going to say fish because that cuts it down. And then look right there. Fish texture brush 03 shows right up there for some reason at the top. I wouldn't think T would come up at the top with the A's, but pull chains at the top. So who knows? Who knows? Nothing makes sense. It's all crazy. Dogs and cats living together. All right, so now it basically looks the same right now. Like it all, for all intents and perfect, for all purposes, for all intents and purposes, it still works the same. We've just put a different texture in there, and it gives us a little bit different look. But not bad. I'm not crazy about the roundness of it. It kind of got like a felt pen feel to me, which is cool. Just not what I want to ink with. Um, but it works. But now we're going to really play with the settings. Okay, now's where the magic's going to happen. All right, let's bring this over here so we can see what we're doing. And bippity boppity bippity boppity boo. Brush size. We're going to click on this little thing down here at the end to adjust the setting dynamics. And we know because it gets skinnier at the end and bigger in the middle that it has pen pressure set on this brush. So the lighter we do, the smaller the brush is, and the harder we press, the bigger it is. I don't really want to do that so much with a texture brush. When I'm coming in and putting textures in something, I don't really want that. That's for like inking and drawing, maybe painting. I don't want that here. So I'm just going to take that off altogether. And now it's just stamping that brush along. Okay, that's one thing that I wanted to do. One thing I forgot to do while we're at brush tip. Remember how before we turned off the flip horizontal and stuff? We turned all that off so that that triangle brush would be going at the same angle, whatever angle we set it at, it would be inking at that angle. Now, because this is stamping a texture, I want it to flip side to side. I want it to flip up and down, and I want it to angle randomly. I want it to be as random as possible so it's not just smearing that same texture around the same way. So we're going to turn on random for flip horizontal. So it'll randomly, each time it stamps that little dot, that little shape we made, each time it'll randomly decide which way it's going to flip it. And then we're going to randomly flip it up and down. And then on angle, we're going to come over here and we are going to click on random, and we are going to take it up into the 50s. And then we are going to come down to stroke, stroke, stroke. And now we are going to start to open the gap between those. And so as you can see, like, you can make all kinds of different things out of it. Like you can make it really sparse if you wanted to, or you can make it closer like that. And let's make the brush a little bigger so we can see what we're working with. You know, that's that's got a cool texture to it. Um, let's see, ink opacity. Now there's some place we can have fun. We're going to change that to pen pressure. And so let's see. So that means the less we press on the brush, the more transparent the ink is. The harder we press on it, the more opaque the ink gets, which is cool. That's fun for a texture shader because then you can build it up with each consecutive stamp. Um, Now, if we stop right now, like that's light, and then we press darker, and we get to there. That's pretty cool. That would make really cool trees and stuff. Really cool. But this here we can play with the pin pressure settings. We can adjust. I like messing with this, so I have to press harder and harder to make a bigger difference. I have to work harder to get that difference when it's set down here. If we set it real high, it doesn't take much pressure at all to go from invisible to solid ink. And while you might have a light enough hand that that's the setting you want, I don't have that kind of motor control because I am a disabled artist. So I like to set mine down here. So I have to work harder to get it that way. It takes more effort for me to get that difference. So it's easier for my disabled self to control it. Your results may vary. You might like it straight down the middle. You might like a feather touch because you might draw with the pressure of the whisper of angels. But I don't. I draw like a dump truck. I've got scratches all over my screen protector to prove it. I go through nibs like crazy. But it's the way I get to work around my disability and not just be stuck all the time. So now, like now I'm pressing, it's touching the screen, but nothing's happening. So I've got to press harder to even have it start to show up. And then I could, press harder. And now we're starting to get more trees in the foreground. And then I could press harder and then we have the trees. That's neat. That alone would work really well for trees. Let's get a green. And just like, all right, we're pressing, we're getting nothing. Press a little harder, and you got some fade out trees in the mist. And then we, press a little harder, and we're getting a little more. And oh, you know why it's not working? It's because the layer is set to gray. That's why it's not working. So let's undo that. Let's make a new layer to draw on that's in full color. And then I can describe exactly what it was I was trying to do a minute ago. So see now the harder I press, the greener the trees get and stuff. That is cool, man. That's a good looking tree right yonder. That's a good looking tree line anyway. All right, that worked. I like that. I like that a lot. But we can take it even further and do more with it. Um, let's go to spraying effects and we're going to turn them on. And now everything disappeared. Let's make our particle size larger until the particles start to show up. And we are going to drop the density and we're going to play around with the deviation until we get it where we want. Direction of particle, we're going to click on here and we're going to say random. That will randomly spin it around as it's spitting out these as well. And we're going to tie it to brush size. So whatever size I set the particle to is relative to the size of the brush. So the bigger I make the brush, the bigger that particles will be. Now, if you really want to set the particles to a specific size, then you don't want to tie it to the brush size. I want it this way. So just to show you what I'm talking about, like if I do, let me close this. I hate to close it because I know I'm just going to need to open it again in a second. But if I come over here and make the brush, 60-point brush, then the particles are coming out that size. If I make it an 800-point brush, then they're coming out this size. That's what I want for me personally. I want to know that whatever size I'm working at here with the brush is what size the particles are going to be. Sometimes I don't want that. I have a star brush that I use to paint stars in the background, randomly spits out little dots. I like to set those dots to a specific size and know what size they're going to be. And I can make my brush really big and swoop across the whole sky and know that those dots aren't going to come out the size of basketballs. So, each thing to its own. But for this, I want to be able to know that, what I'm doing, I want to know how it's going to work. I just changed the color to yellow on this just to play around with it and see. That's not bad. Um, all right, let's go back into settings. And stroke will still have an effect on this. So, like, the lower I drop the gap in the stroke, the closer those particles will get to each other. The further away I take it, the more spread out they'll get. And I can't turn that on. So there's a cause and a reason for everything. Like some of them are good in some points for some things. I don't want that quite that spread out. That's further than I want. So I can come over here and shrink that gap and let's see. Now maybe we want to take that texture density up more on the paper too, and have that have more of an impact again, and have that paper texture eat through the brush a little bit more. And oh, see, that's cool. That is cool. Now, not only am I getting the modeled texture of that shape, but I'm also getting the texture of the paper eating through, and it's more like I'm dragging pastels across paper or something now, or just hitting it with a bit of watercolor or something. I like I like the way that texture is coming out. That is I like that. That's cool. And you can always adjust these settings because they're all visible here in the settings menu. And you can always go into the entire settings menu. If it turns out that in the brush settings, you don't really use contrast and brightness or rotation angle. If you don't ever use that, you could turn them off and not have to look at them, not have them cluttering up your options over here. I like to have them because, for me, it's handy, and I like having them there and being able to use them. There's also one thing I wanted to do was ink. There are blending modes here, color mixing. The color mixing gets confusing and it can get kind of muddy kind of quick. So usually I don't use it, but it is something that's there, that's available, that every once in a while I want to use. Color jitter is pretty cool too. It can make each little stamp be a different color and stuff. It can have some pretty cool effects, especially when you're doing crowd scenes and stuff. But that's a whole nother lesson. My voice is about to give out. But anyway, in this little lesson, we have made a new texture brush for filling in cool textures and stuff in the background that you can change the settings on. We have done a couple of different little, we've done an inker with texture. We've done this cool teardrop one that has that cool rough edge to it as you go through. And then we've got the angled inker that I just love those lines, man. I just love that. I don't know why I always do randomize, but that's just always my first thing to go to draw. I don't know why. Because I like eyeballs, I guess. That's why I married an optician. That's the only reason. Not because she's cute. No. It's because I like eyes. Anyway, so that's a couple of different brushes. I'm going to make them available in the newsletter. This is the video on how I made them. I hope it's helpful. I hope you go out and make your own awesome, cool brushes. Really play around with this because you can make some really neat stuff. And sound off in the comments. Let me know what kind of brushes you'd like to see me make, what kind of questions you have, and I'll dive into it and I'll answer your questions. We can do a whole video about it. I would really like to do some brushes from real textures and stuff. I've made brushes from photographs and stuff before. I think that would be really interesting and fun. So anyway, I'm going to be making that stuff available down the road. But here you go. Hope it helps. And remember, no matter what, your Uncle Fishy loves you. And stick around because we've got a new outro video saying thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. So love you. Bye bye.